I thought it would be useful to talk about what I call the three pathways to wealth. Okay? The first one is what I call the default pathway. It works extremely well. It's very reliable. It takes time, though. And it is a pathway that I have talked about here for the last 15 years. And it should not sound very unusual to you at all. It is not guaranteed, but it's pretty darn close. That pathway is to go to medical school, go to residency, complete all that, and get a job where you're being paid reasonably well. Okay, we're talking, about what your specialty or what your profession, if you're not a doc, is worth. Then over the next 2 to 3 decades, you carve out 20% of your earnings and you put it toward retirement. You basically save 20% of your money for retirement and you put it into some sort of reasonable investment. Okay. Typically, index funds, right? You're buying all the stocks in the world using index funds. Maybe you have some bonds in there as well. Maybe there's a little bit of real estate, whatever. Typical portfolio, you put your money in there, 20% of it or so. And you know what? After 15, 20, 25 years, you hit financial independence. You get to the point where you never have to work again. You have 25 times what you spend per year saved up in retirement accounts, whether it's a 401k or a Roth IRA or a taxable account. Okay? It's not very complicated. It's not very hard. It's very reproducible. It's very easy to teach. And frankly, if you learn it well and you stay the course with your plan, it's pretty hard to screw up. Okay? That's pathway number one. And the pathway, frankly, that most doctors should be on. The real problem in the doctor financial world is not enough doctors are on this pathway. They're on no pathway at all. Okay, so this is the default pathway. Pathway number two is what I call the leveraged real estate pathway. You still have to save a bunch of your money, and maybe you save significantly more than 20% of your money. And you use it to invest with leverage, with borrowed money. Okay. Typically, this is done using real estate investments, whether they are short term rentals or long term rentals. You buy the properties. As the debt starts getting paid down and the property appreciates, you borrow money out of the property again to maintain a reasonable but constant or relatively constant amount of leverage until you reach financial independence, at which point you can do what you want. You can start paying down those properties and reducing your leverage risk or whatever you want to do. This pathway is probably faster than the default pathway, mostly because you're using leverage, but also because you are putting extra effort in, and that effort has value. Typically in the beginning, you're often managing these properties yourself. You're certainly putting effort in making the deals and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is a little bit faster pathway. In fact, I think a lot of people can even reach financial independence, particularly with short-term rentals, in less than a decade. It does work. I've met many docs who have gone down this pathway and been just fine. Now, you can't just do it haphazardly. You can't just throw the money around willy-nilly and not manage the properties well. You can't buy terrible properties. You can't get over-leveraged and get to the point where your properties are not cash flowing. It does take more time. It takes more effort. It takes more expertise. And yes, there is more risk there. And yes, there are aspects of a second job to it. But I think it's a faster pathway than pathway one, and it's reasonably reproducible. Okay. Pathway number three is what I call the entrepreneurship pathway. Okay. It's interesting. People ask me, well, how do I get wealthy? And I generally tell them about pathways 1 and 2. Is that how I became wealthy? No. I went down pathway 3. Now, we were also at the same time on pathway 1. And if my pathway 3 had not worked out, our backup plan was to go down pathway 2. Okay. We would have still reached financial independence by the time I was in my early 50s, only from pathway 1 without any entrepreneurship whatsoever. But because the white coat investor worked out as an entrepreneurial investment, as a side gig, as a business, whatever you want to call it, we became financially independent when I was 43 years old, essentially cutting 8-9 years off the pathway to financial independence. Now, this is very similar to what the doc we interviewed today has done. Okay? He's a serial entrepreneur. He came out of residency, and becoming wealthy was very important to him. It was important enough that he put in a whole bunch of work on the side. That's not all that different from what I did with the White Coat Investor. I basically had 2 full-time jobs for a number of years, one of which was not paying me very much for quite a while. And he did this serially. When something worked out, great. He took the money, he invested it, generally invested with quite a bit of risk. But he invested the money and he took on another serial venture. Even now, he's talking about starting another company. He was willing to do a lot of things that a lot of people are not willing to do. Work very hard, not only in his radiology and pain practices. I mean, just doing radiology and pain is pretty unusual. But after hours, on weekends, on holidays, on his vacations, he was putting in this additional work on this other stuff. Okay? He was willing to move to Puerto Rico, for example. I'm not willing to move to Puerto Rico. We've had blog posts, by the way, if you're interested on that, and whatever it's called. I can't remember, Law 60 or whatever it is. But if you search Puerto Rico at the White Coat Investor website, you can read more about the tax advantages available when you relocate to Puerto Rico. But he was willing to do these things, right? And the fun thing is when you have a massive savings rate, right? You're making good money. You're a radiologist. You're a pain doc. You're busting your butt. You've got this high 6-figure income. When you're doing that and you're saving almost all of it, your ability to take risk is very, very high. Whether that is business risk, whether that is leverage risk, whether that is market risk, whether that's investment risk, your ability to take that risk is very high. Now, the risk doesn't always pay off, right? Picking stocks is not, a practice I generally recommend, no matter how much you're going to study the stocks. I mean, just look at the data, right? There's all these professionals out there picking stocks, trying to beat the market. And what percentage of them do it in the long run, right? 5%-ish, over 20 or 30 years, that's the percentage that beats the market. So if those are professionals with all kinds of analysts working with them and high-powered computers helping them that are beating the market, it's probably not the way for you to bet. Okay, but if you're saving 80% of a really high income, it really doesn't matter all that much how you're investing. You're going to become wealthy very quickly. Okay, did he have some winners? Absolutely, right? Crypto's done very well over the last 15 years. And so investments in that, it could have gotten somebody very wealthy very quickly. Okay, now he's got a little bit of real estate on the side as well. And when that pays off, similarly, you can do very well. Now, high returns help, but that big savings rate was a massive method, right? It would be interesting to go back and look at how much of his money was brute force savings versus how much was investment returns. And I wouldn't be surprised to learn that 30%, 50% or more of it is just money he made that he didn't spend. And that's oftentimes how you can get anything like this going, whether it's a bootstrap business, whether it's, reaching financial independence, making a lot of money and saving a big chunk of it is how you get wealthy very quickly. So don't assume that you can, not make much and not save very much of it. If you just had put it all in Bitcoin and Tesla, it would have paid off. There's a whole bunch of people that picked something besides Bitcoin and Tesla for whom it did not pay off. Okay? So be careful with that. And certainly, as you begin to approach enough, remember Bill Bernstein's advice, right? When you win the game, stop playing. Okay? Now, that's not specific advice. Don't try to pin him down on what exactly that means. But the point is, if you get to 10 and 20 and 30 million, and then you go back to broke, you suck at this game. Okay? It's not that hard of a game. You only got to win it once. Okay? So if you're getting to the point where you've got 8 figures in assets, take some of it out and stick it in treasuries or something very safe so that you'll never go back to being broke. Okay? I've had a few stories of docs who have done ridiculously well, oftentimes with stories like this doc has had, and then are subsequently find themselves at 55 or 60 back working clinical shifts because they have to. And you don't want to be in that situation. You only got to get rich once if you do it right and you invest in a way that you will stay rich. So I hope that's helpful.
The hosts of The White Coat Investor are not licensed accountants, attorneys, or financial advisors. This podcast is for your entertainment and information only. It should not be considered professional or personalized financial advice. You should consult the appropriate professional for specific advice relating to your situation.